with any illness, you can still find the joy and the love in those everyday beautiful moments.
From Mamma Mia, I'm Mia Friedman, and you are listening to No Filter, candid conversations that count. It takes around 6 weeks for grief to really sink in after you lose someone. The shock has subsided, the adrenaline wears off, everyone goes back to their normal lives, and you're left alone with your grief and your memories and a big hole where someone that you love used to be. For Simmone Logue, things really hit home for her a little bit earlier than that, in week 5. The fine food entrepreneur and lady startup had relished 17 years of true love and companionship with Australia's most notorious and infamous celebrity agent, Harry M. Miller, before he died of a heart attack at the age of 84. But in a way, Simmone had said goodbye to her beloved Harry long before he died. A few years into their relationship, Harry was diagnosed with dementia, and his decline was pretty swift. And for the last 7 years of their relationship and his life, she was not just his partner, but his carer. So how do you say goodbye to the love of your life? And how do you keep loving someone who is slipping away from you day by day? Here's Simmone Logue.
I was listening to you guys at 2 o'clock this morning.
Were you? Which
Is
one?
it 100 Years of Dirt?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rick Morton.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's an amazing
Darling,
storyteller.
you've saved me over the last little while because I haven't been sleeping, so I've been listening to you, and it's been really comforting. Your voice is a killer.
Oh.
Like you just feel like you're there in the night with me having a chat.
Oh, that's such an honour to be there giving you little snuggles in the night. You said it's week 6, and I remember a grief counsellor once telling me that he always makes a note in his diary 6 weeks after the death of someone to check up on a patient, because there's something about 6 weeks that the shock's worn off, everyone's gone back to their lives, there's nothing to organise or to arrange anymore, and reality hits in and it's a very hard time. How are you doing?
Well, it happened to me at week 5. And I just woke up on Monday morning last week and I just felt like I'd been hit by a bus. And, yeah, all of my peeps had gone back to their everyday life. You know, I'd had them on a rotating roster, all my little girls in the bed, you know, night after night and giving me cuddles. And, yeah, so the Monday morning, I don't know, it just hit me, and I'm grieving a lot for my darling Harry. But what I've realised is I'm actually grieving for something that I've lost too, because I've been his carer for so many years, like 7 years really. And so there's this big gaping hole in my day every day where I'd go to him and spend hours, you know, walking him or just sitting and holding his hand. And, you know, so I'm grieving for that role that I've had. And, yeah, so I feel sort of disenfranchised a bit, you know.
So you lost a part of your identity as well as,
exactly.
as his carer.
Yeah. And I found last Monday, I found some beautiful love letters that he'd written to me, and it made me realise how long it had been since we'd had a real adult man to woman romantic feet on the ground kind of engagement, and how I realised how much I'd become the carer rather than the lover. And I realised how lonely I've been. And yeah, so looking for love. So I may as well put it out there now.
How did you and Harry meet?
Well, when I was a kid, I saw him on the television, and I just remember thinking, oh my God, I need to meet this man one day. You know, he was just so charismatic.
What was it about him?
He was incredibly handsome, but it was his charisma. And I don't know, just something just clicked. I was a teenager. And when we were little, when we were kiddies, my Mum and Dad used to play Jesus Christ Superstar on the record player, and when they'd put us to bed at dinner parties, and so I knew every word of every song of Jesus Christ Superstar. Anyway, so I had an idea for a cooking show. And so I made this sort of daggy little handheld pilot and I sent it to him by
When
courier.
you were how old?
Oh, this is
When you were an adult, not when you were a teenager.
Yeah. This is how I met Harry.
Oh, okay. So you were already established with your business, Simmone Logue.
Yeah, and I decided, I'd like to make a cooking show.
Yeah.
And this was like, probably 18 years ago. And so I sent him the little pilot that I'd made, very crude, daggy, little shaky handy thing, but with a box of chocolate cupcakes, which kind of nailed the deal, And it took him 1 hour to call me. And then the next day I was in his office at 9 a.m. the next morning, and I was a goner. It was just love. We were inseparable ever since.
What was that first meeting like? Because I've been in that office.
I was so nervous. I changed my outfit 10 times that morning. I couldn't get it right.
So you did actually want to do a cooking show, but you also knew that he was the best agent in town, without a shadow of a doubt. But also, was it a bit pre-Tinder? I know.
Oh, totes.
How I'll meet him.
Totes. I totally manipulated the situation. I thought, here's my opportunity.
I love it. So you engineered that meeting and the cupcakes knowing full well, television show, who cares?
And television, who did care? It didn't matter in the end, because that's something now that I'm going to pursue now that, it's my new chapter. That's my vision for where I want to take my professional world from here. But I just fell madly in love with Harry. And
how could you not? Did he ask you out in that first meeting?
It was Friday morning, and it was the 12th of April, I remember, all those years ago. And the next morning he called, and my sister was staying, and she answered the phone, and I was sleeping.
Your twin sister?
Yes,
yeah.
And he wanted to know where I was. Well, Simone's in bed and she's having a sleep-in because she's exhausted. And he wanted to know, are you taking her breakfast, and how does she like her eggs cooked?
Wow, so he was already...
And then on the Sunday night we were at dinner. And basically inseparable from that point on. Yeah. Mm.
He was how much older than you when you guys met?
30 years.
30 years older than you.
So I was 37 and he was 67, but he was the most dynamic person I had ever met in my life. And I saw myself in him. He was kind of me with a penis.
In what sense? Because I see you as quite shy, and he's nothing like that.
I'm very entrepreneurial, and, I'm a driver, and, I'm
ambitious.
I'm very ambitious, and I knew that he would never be calling me up wanting to know what time I'm coming home from the office, because he got it.
Yeah. Had you dated guys like that before who didn't understand your ambition?
And the male ego, I mean, I don't want to sound sexist, and I'm actually quite old-fashioned. I'm a businesswoman, and I'm very driven at work, and I'm entrepreneurial, but at home I'm very old-fashioned. When I met Harry, I basically fired all the hired help. He had the full-time butler, the cook, the cleaner, that was like bloody Pitt Street in there. And I want to look after my man, and I don't want to have to dress for dinner and sit there while the butler's at the table and that's not real life. And so I just thought that Harry found, because he was so used to having all that support around him, but I think secretly quite loved the fact that I started to nurture him, and, we'd be having daggy old Thai takeout in bed on Friday night with the telly, and I don't think he'd ever experienced that world before. And, I'd come home and have to take my dirty old boots off at the front door of the Horizon, penthouse covered in sticky date pudding, smelling like a fish cake, and I was independent, and I was just as vibed up about work as what he was, and it was just a fantastic dynamic between the two of us. And so the age difference, I'm not an ageist. My boyfriend before Harry was 28, And then when I met Harry, he was 68. So,
Yeah.
I just think people are people, love is love. And I just found him the dynamo person I've been looking for.
I just want to pop in here to tell you a little bit more about Harry M. Miller in case you're not familiar with his notorious, legendary, colourful story. Who was he and why was he a big deal? Well, he was a promoter and a producer at first, and in the 70s he brought out people to Australia like the Rolling Stones, the Beach Boys, Louis Armstrong. He brought musicals like Hair, Jesus Christ Superstar, The Rocky Horror Show. He discovered Marsha Hines. And as a celebrity agent, he represented Lindy Chamberlain, Stuart Diver, Gough Whitlam. Anytime there was a big celebrity story and the media were clamouring, Harry would always be the one who would come between them and be the one that would speak to the media and negotiate that story. And so the media always had this love-hate, mostly hate relationship with him, because as soon as Harry was involved, it was great for the families because they didn't have to, deal with whatever was going on in their life. They had someone to sort of protect them. And Lindy Chamberlain, in fact, was one of the people that gave the eulogy at his memorial service. And she talked about having Harry was like having an Alsatian at the door, because often these people would be in really vulnerable situations. Now, of course, Harry took a cut of whatever the media deal was, but the media would always try to get to these people or these celebrities or these regular people like Stuart Diver that had had extraordinary things happen to them and try to negotiate direct. And they knew when Harry got involved, the price immediately would go up. Today, his company continues. It's run by his youngest daughter, Lauren, and it's still called the Harry M. Miller Group, and it represents celebrities like Osher, Naomi Simpson, Dr. Katrina Warren. It still represents some of the original cast of Big Brother, a lot of reality stars, including Sarah Marie. And the other thing about Harry M. Miller that people might remember is that he actually went to jail for almost a year in 1982 after the collapse of a ticketing company that he'd started called CompuTicket. And he was very open about that. He obviously wasn't happy about it, but he was kind of like this lovable, talented rogue. He taught me, as my friend, some things about negotiating that I've never ever forgotten, and he showed extraordinary kindness to me and to my family. He was one of a kind. You obviously knew his reputation as loving women before you met him, and what was one of the wonderful things about the memorial service was the wives and the girlfriends and the children all sort of, and the ex-girlfriends up there with you, and everyone just so connected. In fact, I think I saw you walking around holding hands with one of his ex-wives. Has he got 2 ex-wives or 3 ex-wives?
So Wendy Lapointe, who is adorable. I just adore her. And Deb and I are close. Look, we're the modern family on steroids.
Yeah.
And I love that. Like, I'd like to think that I was kind of the glue that held it all together, because I am so family orientated.
Yeah.
And, I think when you love somebody so profoundly, you love everything, the whole package that they come along with, and their past and their present and all their little idiosyncrasies. And so, I knew that Harry was a terrible philanderer. And yes, it was challenging over our time together. But, I saw Harry's vulnerability. He was just human like the rest of us. And that was the way that he blocked his pain. He had pain. We've all got pain. And, and that was Harry's thing. It was his medicine, or his, I want to say maybe addiction a bit,
Yeah.
And I did a lot of work on myself to understand that it wasn't about me, and I loved him unconditionally. And, right to the very, very end.
When did you see the first signs that he wasn't well?
It was probably 5 years into us, and he would say to me, "Oh, baby, do you think I'm losing it?" And of course, I'd say, "Oh, not at all, darling, and just try and sweep it. We were sweeping it under the carpet.
So he was in his early 70s by then.
Yeah.
And what sort of things would make him think that? Because he always had a hearing problem and he had hearing aids.
Yeah, which was challenging, and it threw that whole thing into the mix. But look, he also had a busy life and a busy head. And I know how that is. I know how it is for me at my age, to keep my head on and remember. I'm always writing lists and, but it started to impact, and he started to ask me lots about, what are we doing again today and who and where? And then I became more and more supportive of him in that way. And
did you consciously, they often say about couples that you sort of can mould to compensate for each other's weaknesses, and it can almost hide things for a while because you just become the person who reminds him. And at what point did you realise, hang on, this isn't just sort of generalised forgetfulness, this is more than that? Or was it more of a slow dawning realisation?
It was slow, but somebody would ask Harry a question, like after probably the age of 75, and he would always look at me to answer. I was his voice, his memory, and in the end it was a decision that we made as a family to put Harry into care. I'm running my big business by this point and trying to look after him at home, and it was really challenging. And it was the best thing that we ever did for him and for me. But at the time, it was so terribly traumatic and distressing.
I can't imagine. The last time I saw him actually was at your restaurant in Double Bay, and he would come in there each day. I think he wasn't really working anymore, and his daughter Lauren had sort of taken over the business managing celebrities, and he had a carer with him, and he knew that he knew me, but he didn't know how he knew me.
Yeah.
And it was hard to see him like that. I got a real shock, and I think quite soon after that you decided to put him in care. What made you take that decision? When did it become... What was that tipping point for you?
I suppose we were just worried about his well-being because the whole carer thing wasn't working. Harry was too dogmatic and he had his own mind in a way, and so he wasn't doing what he was told. And it just got messy, and we wanted to keep the dignity there and, make sure that the transitions were made, so that, there was lots of dignity.
Yeah.
When
you say that, for people who haven't experienced what it's like, and did he have Alzheimer's or dementia?
Vascular dementia. So he'd go out for a bottle of milk and not come, and I'd have to go try find him after an hour and a half. Do you know what I mean? He'd be sitting at the bus stop or down at the ice cream parlour, so.
Yeah. And there was also the fact that he was famous.
This is it. So I became very protective of him, and, he was
always a very proud man.
Absolutely. So we wanted to maintain that. So we put him into care, and it was harrowing. I spent the first year basically living in there with him. I never wanted to go home. I'd go late at night and be back there early in the morning, try and run my business from, my laptop there by his bed. And
how did you explain to him where he was going to live?
In the end, he thought I was living there with him. And I'd tell him, I'm just going to nick next door and put a load of washing on. And he'd say, don't be long, darling. I'd say, I won't be.
So at first he thought you were just moving house.
Yeah.
And that's where you were living.
Yeah. But you know what, Mia? It wasn't all bad. I found a lot of joy in those last 5 years with Harry because... we'd lived such a busy, big life full of so many distractions, and then it just really, in the end, it just came down to just us, and it was so profound, the love, that I don't think I'll ever feel that again. I'm praying and hoping that I will, and I'm looking for love now because I've realised I've been grieving for a very long time, not just for 6 weeks. I've been grieving years. But it was very, very beautiful as well to have that level of intimacy and profound love with another person. And, I'm not going to let the vascular dementia take that away. He was still my darling right to the end, and I still was putting my lippy on and brushing my hair in the car park every day and making sure, and I'd walk in there and he would look at me like I have never been looked at before. He made me feel like the most beautiful woman in the world. And yeah, he always told me every day that he loved me. He always told me I was beautiful. He always commented on my pretty new little dress. Like, it was a beautiful love story. And so dementia and Alzheimer's doesn't have to be all bad, or if with any illness you can still find the joy and the love in those everyday beautiful moments. We were in a simple little room, in a single bed, and I would just go there, and sometimes I'd be that exhausted because I'm bloody busy, and I'd go and he'd be in bed like on a Saturday afternoon, and I would just take my dirty old boots off and he would lift his arm and I would just slide into bed next to him and he would just pat me on the shoulder like I was the sick one, and we were like pigs in shit. It was beautiful.
So he knew who you were up until the end?
Yeah. And we were very lucky because we got to have a day with him on that last day, and he had a massive heart attack and he was brought back to life by the paramedics, and we had a day up at St Vincent with him, the girls and Wendy and I. It was just so incredibly beautiful and intimate, and we got an opportunity to say goodbye to him. And at one point he opened his eyes and he looked into my eyes and he said, "I love you." And I said, "I love you too, darling." And he said, "Kiss me." And I kissed him, and they were the last words that we spoke to each other. And when he passed, he was looking into my eyes so deeply, I thought he was going to take me to the other side with him. It was just the most beautiful, profound, loving experience I will ever have, ever. And I'll cherish it. And it was a gift that he gave us, he gave me. And then, to be with, what I call the girls my family now.
Yeah.
Like, he's really concreted our relationship. We're so close. So.
Wow.
It was special.
That's extraordinary. I've never heard a story like that before.
It was so special. But that's Harry Miller.
Yeah.
That's him. That's how he rolled.
To go out like with Kiss Me, like it's like something out of Casablanca or...
I said to the girls...
What a love story.
I said, Hollywood, if they would have read that in a script, if you were trying to pitch something, they would have thrown it out saying it's too cheesy,
Yeah. Those years that he was in hospital or in care before he went to hospital on that last day, you were also running a very big business. You've written a book, you've got your restaurants, you have a big catering practice, you've got a staff of almost 100 people, I think. How did you have to step back as a sort of a CEO and running that business? I mean, you can't really. When it's your business, did you have to bring people in? What did you do?
Well, I think it was kind of the universe providing in a way, because, look, my business has grown to such a point now that I've got amazing people around me. It's probably a bit like you. I'm still the walking, talking face of the brand.
Yeah.
And, I've still got my boots on every day, and I'm still... I am the managing director of my company, but I'm lucky enough now to have such fantastic expertise around me, and I trust my people, and I there's a lot of mutual respect and there's a lot of talent there, and so it was very timely because the wheels of industry are chugging along, and I don't actually need to be on the front line anymore. So I'm working on my business more than in my business. And, you know, there's a thing called a laptop and an iPhone. And, you know, although, yes, I consider myself a workaholic, not in a negative way, in a positive way.
Yeah.
I love to work and I love my business. I'm very passionate. I'm very driven. And I could do that down at Wentworth Manor where I was with Harry, and I would have his dinner table there on the wheels with my laptop, and I'd put my foot up so he could hang onto my foot because I'd be typing.
You needed both your hands.
Needed both my hands so he'd hang onto my foot and have my foot up there. And so I just, you know, I've become very, very good at compartmentalizing and utilizing every little part of my day, no matter where I am. If I'm in the car, I'm making calls. If I was down with Harry, I'd be picking up all my emails, and you know, and the other really big thing and big change, an enormous great thing that's happened in my life is a year and a half ago, I discovered yoga. Oh my God, it has absolutely changed my life. So I decided for 1 hour every day I was going to take out for my practice. And so we're a year and a half or a year and 6 months into it now, and I just feel amazing emotionally, mentally, physically, just so much stronger. So, you know, there was Harry, work and yoga, and it really brought a beautiful balance. So my team at work, I adore them. You know, there is 100 of them. They never leave me, which is great because there's a lot of intellectual property there, and you don't have to keep going in and reiterating, you know, about the core values of your brand. And so the sky's the limit. And so now I suppose I'm thinking about my next chapter. Apart from having a good 2 or 3 hours every day now that I'm needing to fill, I'm thinking, what am I going to do with that time, you know, in a really positive, fantastic way for myself.
You talked about that transition, and I imagine it was slow from lover to carer, and it's almost like a motherly role in a way. Harry was always so, you two had an extraordinary chemistry to be around. As that ebbed away, I don't even know what my question is, but I guess it's something that does happen slowly, but it must be something that you must have grieved while he was alive.
But he was so amazing at being able to give me little windows.
Because he was in a wheelchair.
Yeah,
could he speak? Like, could you talk to him about things?
Look, I did grieve for if I was having a shitty day or I lost a deal at work, or I was having a punch-up with someone at work or whatever, and I wanted to run to my darling and talk to him like I always did, and he always gave me advice. Not that I always took it.
But he had great advice.
Yeah. I grieved for that, and sometimes I would just go and fall into his arms and sob my eyes out, and it was confusing for him. But he was still my Harry that I guruized right to the very end. And we still, even though I was carer role, we still had that man-woman beautiful connection.
Well, it sounds like it with his final words at the end.
Like
you don't say that
and when I was in the room, he never ever took his eyes off me.
Well, you're a hottie.
But the connection, that connection that he and I had.
Visceral.
Yeah, and that is something that, you know, I've been thinking a lot about us, and I've been thinking a lot about, I suppose, my future on a personal level, and how how carefully I have to tread for the future of who I'm looking for to spend the rest of my life with, because I'm never going to find another Harry Miller. No. I don't want to put that expectation out there, because then I might never find love. I am looking for an extraordinary person. I don't do being on my own. and I don't want to.
Well, you're a twin, so I think you've got that, perhaps that need to twin.
Yeah, to have a deep connection.
Yeah.
What
was Harry's relationship like with your sister? I often wonder that about twins.
She adored him.
Because it must be an interesting thing to navigate as a twin, the relationship that your twin sister has.
It took me a long time to introduce Joey to Harry.
Really?
I just thought, oh no, what if she doesn't like him?
Yeah.
And in the early days, he was such a gruff kind of guy, you know, rah, 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 rah. Like he softened a lot over the years with me.
He did.
But in the beginning, I'm like, oh God, is she going to say to me, darling, what the hell are you doing? You know, like, you know. But no, I finally worked up the courage, and we had dinner, the three of us together, and she fell madly in love with him too. And we were like the three musketeers. Yeah.
Was there a time when it was explained to him what was happening, when he did understand and he did get that glimpse into what his future might be in those early days? Like when it was the early diagnosis?
I think we were lucky that the dementia did dip down to this might sound crazy, but a good enough place for him to lose his comprehension of what was happening, which I think is kind of a godsend in a way.
So it happened quite quickly.
Yeah, and then he plateaued out. And so, you know, it just became our normal life, and I would be there every day. It was like I was just coming home from work, and he'd like, oh, I've been waiting for you all day. Thank God you're here. Like, you know, and he'd just think I'm coming home from work. You know, and then I'm going to put the washing on.
So he wasn't scared and he wasn't angry, because dementia can, from what I understand, can take different forms.
It can do that. No, he was peaceful. He was happy. You know, I mean, there was one point when I said, I'm just going to pop next door to put a load of washing on, darling. He says, geez, you do a lot of fucking washing. And I'm like, oh, God, maybe he isn't as gone as I thought he was. Maybe he's got us all fooled.
Oh, that's fantastic. He could have lived many, many, many years longer. I was wondering if you ever thought about dating while he was still alive. I think I know what your answer is going to be, but you're a young woman. You've got needs and wants, and I can't imagine that he satisfied every adult part of you. And I'm not just talking about sex. I'm also talking about wanting, you know, to be in a relationship with an equal, I suppose.
Oh, look, do I look like Mother Teresa?
A little bit.
I've had my
because 7 years is a long time.
No, I've had my intimates and my special people that have been giving me support and love along the way. But the thing is,
I'm glad, and he would be glad too, I think.
The thing is, though, there's no rule book for this stuff.
No.
And already I spend 8 to 10 hours at work. Then I would go to Harry for 2 or 3. There's not a lot left for watering a relationship or a new love interest, you know, and when so much of your heart is still in another place, it's very, very difficult. And so, look, whilst I tried to navigate that, it always fell away in the end, because, you know, if I walked in the other person's moccasins, which I did, I had to let it go. And so
you're in love with someone else.
Yeah. So in a way, Harry has given me now a second chance at love, because he could have been with us for another 10 years. I could have been spending another 10 years in an aged care facility with him, loving and adoring him, and not giving myself the emotional heart space to be able to fully surrender to somebody else. And so, yes, I am still young. I still, you know, have a bit of mojo.
Got a lot of mojo.
And yeah, I'm getting out there, girl. I'm going to get out there.
Well, they're big shoes to fill, but whoever comes into your life next is an incredibly lucky person. And I saw the change in Harry from the time that he met you and the time that we spent together as two couples was awesome. And the way he looked at you and the way you were together is something that I will never, ever forget.
Oh,
so
thank you, darling. That's lovely.
Yeah, I'm just so glad for him and for you that you had the time together that you did. Thanks for listening to No Filter. If you are in Sydney, can I suggest that you, if you possibly can, drop by Simmone Logue's cafe in Double Bay. It is one of my favourite places to eat. Her sticky date pudding, her cupcakes, everything she makes is extraordinary. You can also buy her pies at Woolies, and she has a catering service if you live in Sydney as well. Oh, and her crumbles are amazing too. She also has a cookbook where she reveals some of the recipes behind her famous dishes. It's called Simmone Logue in the Kitchen, and we will pop it in our Apple store if you go to apple.co/Mamma Mia. If you are looking for something to listen to next, why not listen to the new season of I Don't Know How She Does It, where we've done something a little bit different with this season. I Don't Know How She Does It is a great podcast series that people still talk to me about all the time. It's interviews with women who are juggling a whole lot of stuff, and it's kind of about their behind-the-scenes lives and how they do it. For this series, we focused on the remarkable stories of girls, quite young girls who either are in their teens or who were in their teens when they did incredible things. If you've got kids, it's a great one to listen to with your kids, and it's also pretty inspiring to listen to as an adult. Holly Wainwright is the host, and she chats to these young women who've achieved so much in such a short amount of time, like Emma Carey, who at 20 became a paraplegic, but through grit and determination, she somehow learned to walk again. Subscribe in your podcast app now, and join me next week on No Filter, where I speak to the barefoot investor himself, Scott Pape. No Filter is produced by Eliza Ratliff. I am Mia Friedman, and I will see you on Mamma Mia.